This is the browser-based user interface for Dart. The application itself is hosted on a server, whether it's on the cloud or on-prem. Upon logging in, the end user is presented with a list of scenarios. Each scenario is a copy of the model, which includes both the input and output data. Each scenario can independently run to generate an S&OP plan. Scenarios enable what-if analyses and plan comparisons. Role-based access controls who can access a scenario. Role-based access also enable read, write, and delete access to fields and tables. Role-based access also enables multiple users to have access to a scenario and screens. And it enables collaborative and persona-based planning. The export and import buttons at the top enable Excel, export and import, and manipulation of data manually. Let us click our way into a scenario. Upon getting into a scenario, clicking into the top left corner, you'll see a menu tree here with various input and output tables. The structure of the tree and the tables and the fields themselves are all configurable. If you go into any table, for example, you could click into the settings and configure it to your liking to display or not display certain fields. I'm showing a scenario that has already been run. So on the left, you see the input-output tables, and amongst them, the dashboard is the first thing you would go to get an overview of the scenario that has been run. And this is highly configurable and informative. You can filter the locations, parts, and materials, change the look of these cards that you're seeing in front of you on the dashboard. Next, I'm going to cover a very powerful feature of Dart. This is the one of creating data in preparation for creating scenario. I want to introduce the concept of a filter manager. A filter manager is an area in Dart where you can configure different filters of input data. A filter acts like a select query to identify the set of records from a table or a screen that needs to be modified in preparation for a what-if analysis. On the screen here, I've already populated with a configured filter, which is essentially selecting data from a demand table based on criteria for a location and material. If you click the preview button, you will see the preview of the query in the bottom here. And this is basically for users who are familiar with SQL. You can see the result of the filter that you have just configured. So the user can configure as many filters as possible just by specifying the criteria in the fields from tables that they can select. So this very powerful feature allows the end users to create input data for different scenarios without requiring them to know SQL. Here we demonstrate the concept of scenario generation itself. So next what we're going to do is to take the filter that we just configured and use it to generate scenarios themselves. So in this screen, I'm showcasing two scenarios that have been developed by the end user solely by interacting with the user interface. So in this first scenario, this scenario is named as demand 10%, and the second scenario is named plus 20%. The first scenario is essentially using the select query that we just configured in the filter creation process. We are using that to configure the minimum demand to be equal to the old minimum demand multiplied by 1.1. And similarly, the demand plus 20% is configured using a 1.2 multiplier. And if you click the preview buttons, you will see the SQL queries equivalents appearing on your screen. So this allows the end users to create unlimited number of scenarios using a combination of input tables and the filters that were created in the previous steps. It's extremely powerful for the end user to create scenarios without requiring them to be knowledgeable in SQL or without IT help. Next, we are going to use the scenarios that we just created to create a process chain. A process chain is nothing but a sequence of steps which use the scenarios that we just created to run in a sequence. When we press this execute button, the scenarios run in a given sequence. So the end user can specify the sequence in which the scenarios need to be created, copied, and run. And there is no limit to the number of scenarios the user can run. So this gives very powerful capabilities for the end users to take the base scenario, for example, copy it to another scenario, bump it up by 10% in terms of demand, and solve it, and repeat that for another scenario, and so on. So the implications of this is that the end users can create this sequence however long they want, and then execute, and each step may take more time, so they may sign off for the night and let this run in the background, come in the morning, and have the results ready for them to look.